Hey, Sivan here, welcome to this video. In this one we're going to be looking at outliner, grouping and naming conventions. So the first thing we're going to start with is naming conventions. So as soon as we make an object, it's just given a default name like pcube1, so polygon cube 1. If we make another, it's pcube2, so on, and same with cylinder or sphere or whatever. When we start modeling and we get sort of quite a complex scene, we want to start sort of naming our objects. Obviously, if you name them as you go, it will make it a lot easier to kind of work with. So there's kind of a couple of ways to do it. The first one is you can just, in your outliner, click where it says pcube2. The other options are you can rename it inside your attribute editor. They're both kind of the same thing. It's up to you which one you use. The alternative is we can go through our objects in our outliner. So on the left, below the toolbar section, there's the perspective view, the foreview, and then we have our outliner and perspective. So what this kind of does is lists everything that's in our project, whether it's hidden or not. They will all kind of show up. So the other option is we can just double click it in there and name it. Maya doesn't support spaces, so pretty much the naming conventions you need to go for are capital letters for the beginning of each word or underscore. If you put a space in, Maya will automatically change that to an underscore. So it's kind of, normally you kind of pick one naming convention and then stick to it. But what will happen, say if I've named it object 1, when I then duplicate that, it will automatically change that to object 2. So once you've kind of named your object once, if it is a very similar thing or the same thing, it will up the numbers for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's kind of naming conventions. It's a good thing to do. It just keeps your outliner tidy, and once you get lots of objects, this will fill up quite quickly. It just makes it easier for you to sort of see what you're doing and what objects you've grabbed. So that's naming conventions. The next thing that we want to look at is grouping. So it kind of is going to relate to duplicate. So we did some of the duplicate special functions in the last tutorial. In this one, we need to go through grouping, so then we can look at some of the advanced duplicate specials in the next tutorial. So grouping is basically works the same way as a folder. So I'm going to just make a couple of these, just drag them wherever. So at the moment in the outliner, I've just got multiples of these objects they're naming because I've given them the naming convention. What I want to do is I'm just selecting them all, and they're all selected in my outliner, and what I want to do is hit Control G. What that would do is item group successfully. So now what I've got is I have a folder, a group that contains all of these objects. One way we can kind of open this, if we've got lots of groups, you can have groups inside of groups. So I could grab some of these and group them, and then group these, and I could put him in a group of his own if I wanted to. I then have 3 separate groups. If we wanted to open this group and everything underneath it, we can hold Shift and click the plus, and it will then open everything inside each of the groups, as well as the main group. May have noticed when I group these objects, it moves the pivot point to 0, 0, 0. This does come in very handy. If you don't want it there, you just need to center pivot or move your pivot point like normal. But everything that's pretty much created in Maya, when it's first done, its pivot point is always at 0, 0, 0, and then you move it where you want. So another thing that's kind of good about groups, one, obviously it tidies up your outliner, it organizes everything, is what we can do is when we grab a group or an object that's a part of a group, we can use its hierarchy to select everything. So I want these cubes to kind of all move together in a minute. Like I can move this one by itself, I can move this one, but what I can do is I can press the up arrow and it has jumped up the hierarchy. So I now have that whole folder, that whole group, and I can move that around. And then I can go up one more level, so up arrow again, and it's now selected all of the cubes because they're each in their groups under the main one. So it's kind of good for moving whole objects together. These are actually separate at the moment because you've got a green and a white. If I select one, up arrow, they're all green, so they're all being taken at the same time inside that one folder. In the next video, I'll show you kind of another really good thing that we can combine grouping with to sort of show how effective it is. But that's kind of naming objects, outliner, and grouping. It's quite a small thing, but it's very important to get some sort of good results and combine with tools when it gets a bit more advanced. That's it. See you in the next video.